Hey everyone, let's jump right into this explainer. We're diving into some fascinating source material today that completely shatters the myth of the evil mastermind and exposes the shocking reality behind cluster B personalities. You know, if you've ever dealt with a narcissist, a psychopath, or someone with borderline personality disorder, you've probably bought into that Hollywood image, right? The calculating, flawless genius. Well, what we're looking at today completely tears that illusion apart. To kick things off, we really have to ask a question that constantly baffles victims of abuse. How on earth can someone who seems so incredibly cunning and sometimes, genuinely has a high IQ, be so profoundly bad at managing their own life? Why are they so prone to making just obvious foolish errors? Why do they rarely get anything right? I mean, from relationships to the workplace, they are constantly driving themselves into scandals and just utter messes.
So, here's our roadmap for the breakdown today. First, the high IQ paradox. Then, pseudo-stupidity versus true stupidity. After that, grandiosity and empathy deficits, followed by the goldfish memory trap, immature and paranoid realities, and finally, intelligence without life skills.
All right, Section 1, the high IQ paradox, clinical contradictions. For decades, clinical studies have fiercely debated whether cluster B personalities possess genius-level IQs or if they actually have below-average intelligence. And the data? It's completely contradictory. You've got Carver's 1977 study suggesting that individuals with borderline personality disorder have this incredibly high average IQ, somewhere around 135. But then, an official 1993 study by the National Institutes of Health found the exact opposite, concluding they actually have much lower than average IQ and verbal skills. So what is actually going on here?
What I found absolutely fascinating in the source material is that, honestly, we've been asking the wrong question all along. Having a high IQ, like acing a math test or solving complex puzzles, has absolutely nothing to do with the actual street smarts and wisdom required to survive human relationships. Wisdom is about perspicacity, right? It's the ability to predict the future, to roll with life's punches, and to successfully design survival strategies. Basically, high intelligence just doesn't automatically equal life wisdom, not even close.
Moving on to Section 2, pseudo-stupidity versus true stupidity, faking it versus living it.
First up, we have this concept called pseudo-stupidity. Now, this is a highly manipulative strategy. Covert narcissists brilliantly utilize pseudo-stupidity by presenting themselves as hapless, naive victims. It's that classic, "oh, oops, silly me" defense, and it's entirely designed to force you to lower your guard, which allows them to bypass your boundaries and exploit you. It is quite literally a calculated mimicry of weakness.
But the source material highlights a crucial difference here. While some of these folks are playing a tactical, Machiavellian game of pseudo-stupidity, overt, grandiose personalities, borderlines, and psychopaths are often plagued by true, inescapable stupidity. They have a genuine fundamental inability to cope with life or to design effective coping techniques. They aren't just pretending to make disastrous choices to mess with you. They literally cannot help it.
Which brings us to Section 3. Grandiosity and empathy deficits, the roots of incompetence.
It all really starts with grandiosity. You can think of grandiosity as a severe, distorting filter on reality. It falsifies all incoming information, feedback, and environmental input, all to protect this inflated, perfect false self. Because think about it, if you believe you are a flawless, omniscient God, you simply cannot process critical feedback from the real world. And if you can't perceive the real world accurately, you inherently cannot act wisely within it. Your reality testing is just completely broken.
And then you couple that with a total lack of warm, emotional empathy, and these individuals become entirely blind to human nuances. I mean, to operate efficiently in life, you need to be able to read the room, right? But because they lack empathy, they are completely blind to those subtle human cues. This totally alienates their peers, ruins any chance at teamwork, and drastically narrows their opportunities in life. Another thing I found absolutely fascinating in the source material is what psychologists call repetition compulsion, because they constantly misread people and their environment, again, through that lens of grandiosity and zero empathy. They just keep repeating the same disastrous behaviors over and over again. No matter how high the cost is or how severe the penalty they suffer, they just reject the lesson and walk right back into the exact same quicksand. It is literally the definition of a self-defeating cycle.
Next up is Section 4. The goldfish memory trap, a neurological blind spot.
The source material highlights a frankly horrifying neurological blind spot for these personalities. They basically have goldfish memory.
Imagine trying to navigate a complex life, but you're constantly second-guessing if your memories are actually real or if they're just fictional concoctions designed to protect your fragile ego. They literally lack the stored wisdom to look back and say, hey, I did this before and it ended badly, so I probably shouldn't do it again.
Actually, if you've ever felt gaslit by someone whose memory of an argument just completely changes out of nowhere, this is exactly why. Because they are constantly rewriting history to maintain their grandiose self-image, they literally cannot learn from past mistakes. They use something called confabulation, which is basically just making up stories to bridge their memory gaps. But deep down, this leaves them in a state of hidden, constant panic. It's this nightmarish existence where they are never truly sure of their own past experiences.
All right, Section 5. Immature and paranoid realities. Emotional age matters.
These individuals rely heavily on what are called alloplastic defenses. In simple terms, whenever they face a failure, a miscalculation, or a defeat, their immediate psychological reflex is to blame the outside world. They blame nature, reality, other people, anyone but themselves. They genuinely believe the universe is just out to get them, which, as you can guess, completely removes any personal accountability or opportunity for real growth.
At their core, they really are the emotional equivalents of toddlers in a boardroom. Because their core identity is so unstable, they will shift their entire persona based on the latest fad or external pressure. They are surprisingly naive, totally gullible, and easily conned. On top of that, demanding perfect outcomes without investing any actual effort means their execution of tasks is almost always incredibly sloppy.
And that leads us to our final part, Section 6, Intelligence Without Life Skills, Tying the Paradox Together. We absolutely have to separate raw academic and intellectual capacity from practical everyday life competence. A person might have a staggering ability to synthesize insights, engage in abstract thought, or completely ace an IQ test. But as the source material makes devastatingly clear, a high IQ is entirely useless in a vacuum if you lack the fundamental life competence required to, say, cope with a spouse, raise children, collaborate with coworkers, or navigate basic societal rules.
There's this powerful quote from the source material that perfectly sums up the tragedy here. The ability to solve mathematical equations is very nice, but how do you survive life itself if you don't know the first thing about being human? Think about that. No matter how intellectually gifted they might appear on paper, without basic human skills, empathy, emotional memory, and a solid grip on reality, these individuals are effectively disabled in the real world. Their disorder practically guarantees a life of frustration, self-sabotage, and entirely wasted potential.
So I want to leave you with this question to reflect on. When you strip away all the grandiosity and the manipulation, what truly defines intelligence in your life? Is it the ability to outsmart a test, or is it the wisdom to connect and grow alongside humanity? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember, always question what you see on the surface.